You know that feeling when you're getting sick? A fever, a cough, just that general ugh feeling. We've all been there. Well, today we're going to go on a journey deep inside the body to really understand what's happening when we're sick, all the way down to a single cell. So let's zoom in and start the investigation.
I mean, seriously, have you ever really thought about it? It's something we all go through, but the story is so much more dramatic than you might think. It's like a microscopic war going on inside of you, with invaders, defenders, and a whole lot of drama. So, what is really going on in there?
Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with the big picture. What even is pathology? Then we'll meet the culprits, the bad guys that cause disease. After that, we'll see how our amazing cells fight back, what happens when they get overwhelmed, and finally, the two very different ways a cell's story can end.
To answer that huge question of what's going on when we're sick, we basically have to become detectives. And that's exactly where the science of pathology comes in. It's the field that puts on the trench coat and pulls out the magnifying glass to investigate the mysteries of disease.
So pathology, in a nutshell, is the scientific study of disease. But it's way more than just giving an illness a name. It's about figuring out where it came from, how it develops, and the exact changes it causes in our cells and tissues. Think of it as the official rulebook for the entire story of being sick.
Right, so every good story needs a villain, and in the story of disease, there are a lot of them. So let's pull back the curtain and meet some of these major troublemakers.
The causes are just all over the map. You've got everything from infections and, glitches in our genetic code to environmental stuff like toxins and even our own lifestyle choices. Now, we could spend all day on each of these, but to really see the battle up close, we're going to zoom in on the invaders, the infectious agents.
Think of this next part as a police lineup of the usual suspects, a real rogues gallery of the microscopic world's most wanted.
First up, viruses. These things aren't even technically alive on their own. They're basically just little hijackers. A bit of genetic code and a protein shell. They can't do a thing until they get inside one of our cells and completely take over its machinery to make more of themselves.
Next in the lineup are bacteria. Now, unlike viruses, these guys are fully fledged, single-celled organisms. They're out there living their own lives. And they come in this incredible variety of shapes, little spheres, rods, spirals. And while a lot of them are totally harmless or even helpful, the ones that cause disease, well, they can cause some serious trouble. And now for the weirdest one of all, prions. These aren't even organisms. A prion is just a protein that's folded itself into the wrong shape. Now here's where it gets crazy. This one misfolded protein can bump into a normal one and convince it to misfold too. And that sets off this devastating chain reaction. So strange.
So you're faced with all these threats, and you might be thinking your cells are just helpless little victims. Oh no, not at all. They are incredibly dynamic. They've got a whole playbook of strategies they use to adapt to stress and protect themselves. They fight back.
And this is such a crucial point. When a cell adapts, it's not totally normal anymore, but it's not actually injured either. It's hanging out in this middle ground. It's a survival mode, a way of dealing with a new, more stressful environment.
And this image shows one of those adaptations perfectly. This is called atrophy. On the left, you see a healthy, active muscle. But on the right, after it hasn't been used for a while, the muscle cells have actually shrunk. See? They haven't died. They've just downsized to save energy because the workload went down. It's a really smart, reversible strategy.
But shrinking, atrophy, is just one tool in the toolbox. As you can see here, cells have a bunch of different tricks up their sleeves. They can get bigger, they can multiply, they can even change into a different type of cell. Let's look at two other big ones, hypertrophy and hyperplasia.
Okay, so hypertrophy is when the individual cells get bigger. The classic example is a bodybuilder lifting weights. Their muscle cells grow in size. Hyperplasia, on the other hand, is when the cells increase in number. This is often driven by hormones, like when breast tissue grows during pregnancy. So same goal, meet a new demand, but totally different strategies.
But what happens when the stress is just too much, or it goes on for way too long? What happens when adapting just isn't enough anymore? Well, that's when we hit the breaking point, cell injury.
This is such a fundamental idea in pathology. At their very core, most diseases start right here, at this moment. A cell gets pushed so far that it just can't keep its internal environment stable anymore. That balance we call homeostasis. The cell is now officially in trouble.
One of the most common ways this happens is through something called oxidative stress. Let me tell it to you like a little story. You start with a happy, stable atom, but then along comes a free radical, this unstable, angry molecule that's missing an electron. It's desperate, so it steals an electron from a nearby molecule. But in doing that, it damages that molecule and turns it into a free radical. And this kicks off a whole destructive chain reaction until a hero, an antioxidant, shows up to safely donate an electron and stop the chaos.
And this picture just makes it so easy to understand, right? You've got your happy, stable little atom, the angry, thieving free radical, and the cool, calm antioxidant hero who just swoops in to save the day. This tiny drama is playing out inside your body constantly.
So when an injury is just too severe to fix, we get to the final chapter in a cell's life, death. But just like in life, there's more than one way for the story to end. It can be a messy, violent explosion, or a quiet, orderly disassembly.
These two paths have names, necrosis and apoptosis. Necrosis is cell death from injury, and it's ugly. Think of it like a building being demolished with dynamite. It's chaotic, it makes a huge mess, and it causes all this inflammation. But apoptosis, that's programmed cell death. That's the body taking the building apart brick by brick, super neat, without bothering the neighbors.
So let's look closer at necrosis. The injured cell starts to swell up like a balloon. Its membrane breaks, and all of its guts just spill out into the tissue around it. And it's that spillage that acts like an alarm bell telling the immune system to rush in, causing all the redness, swelling, and pain that we know as inflammation.
And then you have apoptosis. Now, this isn't a sign of failure. It's a totally vital, healthy process. Apoptosis is how our body gets rid of cells that are just old, or maybe they're infected, or they have mutations that could turn into cancer. It's a quiet, controlled self-destruct sequence. It's basically essential biological housekeeping.
So, after taking this whole journey, from invading viruses to adapting cells, from free radical thieves to the final moments of a cell's life, it all comes down to this one last question. Knowing that these incredible life and death dramas are playing out trillions of times a day inside of you, how does that change the way you think about your own health?